It's taken volunteer workers from EPT Engineering 3 days to inch this massive roof jack a mere 20 metres. The 9-ton piece of equipment will be part of a longwall mining display, which already includes a continuous mining machine. To many Hunter residents, the museum's exhibits look all too workaday to be considered worthy of posterity, and many have said they'd be better off as scrap metal. New Assistant Director Patrick Sankey condemns that line of thought. For example, he says the apparent jumble of machinery in the museum courtyard tells a history of Australia.
This is a brick press, brought in from Britain, leads, bolt by bolt, lump by lump, imported from a country that had the technical capabilities to make the stuff at the time. This is an American steam hammer from Syracuse in New York. The Australians just didn't make their own industrial machinery until just after the outbreak of the Second World War. And this piece here, it looks like a perfectly ordinary piece of factory equipment, is the first Australian built and designed heavy-duty factory piece.
And as for that open-cut mining bucket, the Assistant Director says it has been much maligned. This has just been sitting out here rusting.
Of course, we want it to rust. New conservation procedures require a good thick coating of rust before we hit it with the preservative, and that makes it impermeable and it'll last indefinitely. It's not rusting fast enough.
Patrick Sankey says the museum is moving in the same direction as other major Australian museums. Previously static displays are coming to life, and the supernova display is providing hands-on education. In time, he says, the public will see more travelling exhibits and more relevant permanent displays, proving once and for all that history isn't junk.
Taking on Newcastle's Ashley Malcolm, the 24-year-old racer showed how it was done, roller racing style. 2 weeks ago in Tasmania, Vinicum broke a 9-year-old world record for the 1,000-metre time trial. His time, 1 minute, 2.8 seconds. But the limelight is nothing new for the racer. At the Seoul Olympics, Vinicum was odds-on to take the gold in his favoured 1,000 metres. And as the world watched, he gave his best.
Just outside. Silver medal. It's a silver medal to Australia.
There's not many Australians who have a silver medal in the Olympic Games, so I think I've got something to be very proud of.
His next hurdle is the World Championships in France in August. Talk of professionalism is further down the track, and despite some cyclists riding overseas for contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, Martin Vinicum is still racing for the fun of it. You must have had some tempting offers.
Yes, I've knocked back a contract in America this year because I'd like to win this World Championship rather than go over there and just ride domestic type races.
What sort of money did you knock back?
Well, you have to talk to my manager about that, but it was a considerable amount.
A spokesman for the Federated Ironworkers Union says problems in the aluminium industry have been a concern for years. Now, he says, a study carried out at Alcan's Curry smelter proved conclusively that the lung capacity of some workers in certain areas is significantly less than employees in other areas. In particular, he says, the study carried out by a group from Newcastle University's medical school proved lung function was lower in employees in the carbon department, where components are made for use in the manufacture of aluminium. It's claimed the effect from 1 year's work in the carbon department is greater on average than smoking a packet of cigarettes a day for a year. Alcan Aluminium agreed to undertake the comprehensive study, and the Ironworkers Union now wants research to continue. The union also wants the company to immediately reduce levels of exposure in the carbon department. The company is working to do so. Masks have now been made compulsory in some areas, but the Ironworkers Union says it will lobby the state government to change workers' compensation laws. Currently, compensation is not paid to people with respiratory disease. The union says it's annoyed the aluminium industry as a whole hasn't recognised problems sooner.
AJC Sires Produce winner Reganza is an odds-on favourite to take out tomorrow's Champagne Stakes at Randwick. The Bart Cummings-trained filly came from near last in the early stages to brilliantly win the Sires Produce by 3 lengths.
Reganza clearing away is going to win the Sires in a trot.
The extra 200 metres tomorrow will be ideal for the New Zealander. Cummings holds a strong grip on the race as he will also saddle up second favourite Tristanar and the outsider Interstellar. For the Sydney Daily Double, Gary likes Ideal Score in the first leg and Regency Fair in the second, which is the St Ledger. In Melbourne, your trifecta should read 2, 1 and 3, Bonded to beat Scarvilla and Je Veux Ami, and in the Daily Double, try Bonded and Port of Biscay. Locally, it's to the dogs we go at Beaumont Park, and the double sees Maya Card and Galloway Dancer as Gary's picks, and Maya Card, Flying Schroeder and What a Buy to fill the placings in the trifecta. Tomorrow night sees the running of the Foster's Newcastle Cup for paces at the Cessnock track, and it's the first time since its inception in 1954 that the race hasn't been run at Broadmeadow, and for the first time it will be a mobile start. Try your luck on Earth Station, Blue Gum Chief and Tricky One for the trifecta, and Nastasi and Samantha Joe for the legs of the Daily Double. Good luck, everyone. While attention was being focused in Sydney at the Australian Basketball Classic, the Kennard Classic has been fought out all weekend at the Broadmeadow Stadium. In the end, it was Sydney City who took the title. After beating the Kennard Hunters by 2 points in the semi-final, the Sydney boys settled down to fight it out with the Australian Institute of Sport, who had surprised many people to win the other semi-final. With many experienced players in their side, such as Kurt Forrester, the Sydney side looked a lot better and went on to record a fairly comfortable win in the final. The 37th Greater Newcastle Master Singles Bowls Tournament was conducted at Lowlands Bowling Club over the last few days, and today saw Terry Harmer of the Maitland City Club squaring off against Don Shoesmith of Beresfield in the final. After a cautious start by both players, it was Harmer who grabbed the early initiative, and he went on to record a relatively easy victory, 31-19. But the game itself was of a very high standard on a green that was running at around the 14-second pace. Down at Barubie Point, the Australian wave ski titles were held, and it was a clear win to the current world champion, John Christensen. He was dominant throughout the event and didn't allow his rivals a serious look in. There were good performances also from Rhys Duncan, Danny Hale and John Owens.
Around 100 people gathered for the opening of the inquiry by Commissioners Dan Kelly and Bill Henningham. The two men stressed the inquiry is not an opportunity to rehash Cessnock's recent garbage strike or a disciplinary exercise. The terms of reference are to examine and report on the capacity of local government services in Cessnock to meet rapidly changing social and economic circumstances. A report will be made to Local Government and Planning Minister David Hay. The first speaker today was Solicitor Rob Marlick, representing Council. He expressed concern over the fact that submissions aren't being made under oath, and he wanted public confirmation that the Commissioners were responsible for the terms of reference, not the government. But it was Cessnock Town Clerk John McGann who spent most of the day in the hot seat, presenting Council's submission to the inquiry.
Do you see that this inquiry could threaten Council's future?
There certainly has been some comment to that effect, but the Minister today has advised Council that he will be making a copy of his report available, and we've just got to wait and see.
But he says the Commissioners have assured Council the inquiry is not a witch hunt, but an attempt to help. In the Council submission, Mr McGann identified changes taking place in Cessnock, Council structure and action taken to meet change, and restraints on Council in meeting community needs. By its own admission, the most common criticism of Council is the condition of its roads. Council says heavy trucks are a problem, along with the large number of roads which need attention and the poor road building techniques of many years ago. Council claims unless additional government assistance is provided, funds can only come from increasing rates or the deletion or reduction of other services. The Commissioners questioned Mr McGann on Council's progress and plans for improved roads and on several other issues, including staff qualifications and training and rates charges both now and in the future. Questions were also raised on how tourism will develop in the Cessnock district. Further information was supplied by Richard Turner of the State Tourism Commission. Other speakers today included representatives of retired mine workers associations. The public inquiry will continue at 10 o'clock in the morning. Those expected to present submissions tomorrow include a representative of the Cessnock branch of the Municipal Employees Union and the member for Cessnock, Bob Roberts. Belinda Borissow, NBN News. State member for Cessnock, Bob Roberts, had few supporters at the inquiry today. If they were there, they were not as vocal as others. However, he presented his submission to Commissioners Dan Kelly and Bill Henningham, saying he would stand by whatever finding the inquiry has. Mr Roberts says he's received a number of complaints about roadworks in the Cessnock district, and there's been concern about road signs in the area. He also says some ratepayers don't feel they're getting value for their dollar, with traditional ratepayers concerned they're receiving little or no service, while new developers get red carpet treatment. Mr Roberts says the commissioners have agreed to undertake a tour with him in the morning to decide for themselves what services are being provided by council.
I don't think the council should be sacked, but we want value for ratepayers' dollars. We want an increase in the service given, and there's none at the moment.
Mr Roberts denies he instigated the inquiry. Did you at any stage ring the Minister's office and suggest that an inquiry was held?
I don't think I did. I asked for advice on the matter and was given that the policy is that inquiry be held, and I said go ahead, and I said you make the decision.
Another speaker today was Stuart Jackson of the Municipal Employees Union, its members involved in Cessnock's recent garbage strike. His submission featured a number of questions, including inquiries regarding the amount of money in the Workers' Accrued Leave Fund, why long-term employees are leaving council, and why council expends money on contract hire to the extent that it does. The commissioners asked Mr Jackson not to refer to the industrial dispute, as it did not fall within the inquiry terms of reference.
I felt we were a little bit restricted because there's so much that we would like to express to the Commissioner, but we're unable to.
Outside the inquiry, he said it's been 7 weeks since Cessnock's outdoor workers returned to work, and still there have been no negotiations to resolve the dispute. But Mayor Marie Callaghan says a proposal has been sent to the union's head office in Sydney. Other speakers today included representatives of retired mine workers associations and Alan McLaughlin of the Hunter District Water Board. He says the board enjoys an effective working relationship with the council, but if development continues in Cessnock at its present rate, another source of water will need to be found in years to come. The commissioners asked Mr McLaughlin to supply further details regarding future water supplies and sewage services. The inquiry continues tomorrow when Mayor Marie Callaghan will present her submission. Belinda Borissow, NBN News. State member for Cessnock, Bob Roberts, took the commissioners on the tour, taking in Kersley, Abernethy, Kitchener and Ellalong. Mr Roberts demonstrating the condition of roads and, in some areas, the lack of curbing and guttering. Mr Roberts says he wants the commissioners to have a balanced view of what Cessnock offers its ratepayers. Afterwards, the commissioners weren't giving their views away.
We wouldn't be making any comments in relation to that. We make our comments in the inquiry.
While agreeing the commissioners remain tight-lipped, Mr Roberts said there was a reaction regarding facilities provided for ratepayers.
They are very disturbed about the services that they were getting, the roads, how much it costs for rates. We discussed that, and also the contrast of new houses going up and what people would expect for their rate dollar for the new houses, and also what the original people expect for the years they've been out there.
When the inquiry resumed, Council's legal spokesman expressed concern that no council representative had been invited on the tour to reply to anything that might have been said. Subsequent speakers addressed the condition of roads in Cessnock, including Mayor Alderman Marie Callaghan, who was greeted with applause as she stepped up to make her submission. She referred to the inquiry terms of reference to report on and examine the capacity of local government services in Cessnock to meet rapidly changing social and economic circumstances. Alderman Callaghan says the major change has been the number of development applications and new industry, and council will cope with it with glee. Alderman Callaghan says residents' first priority is roads, and council has actively campaigned for funds to improve them. But she says there have been decades of neglect from successive governments.
There has never been enough road funding for this city. As long as there was a road available to cart our coal out on, the powers that be were happy. And there's no one who can convince me that we have not been ill-treated.
While fearing council might have been sacked as a result of the inquiry, Alderman Callaghan now believes council has proved it has done nothing wrong.
Obviously, I wish to defend this council and make it crystal clear that there is no problem here. Also, I'm seeking more road funding and more revenue sharing grants and the like. I'm fighting for this city as I was elected to do.
Do you believe that more road funding will become available?
I think yes, I'm sure it will now. We've opened a Pandora's box of disadvantage, and I don't think any government can ever again ignore us.
The lack of road funding was also voiced by the NRMA, while the Bucketian District Ratepayers Association expressed concern over rate hikes. The inquiry continues tomorrow when the Cessnock City Council will respond to submissions made this week. Belinda Borissow, NBN News.
The proposed two-storey facility is to be built beside the existing co-op building on Tarambi Road and will be used in conjunction with the ice plant erected by the co-op last year. As well as a processing plant, the $1 million building will house a retail fish outlet and office space. At present, locally caught mullet, garfish and trevally are transported to Queensland and Sydney for processing, costing the co-op and ultimately the fishermen a great deal of money. However, co-op manager Bill Pearce says with a processing plant in the region, fish can be packaged and transported within the day.
On board their boats, they'll be brine chilled straight away. The fish will be killed immediately and be back in the port, packed that night and on a plane to Japan within 24 hours.
The plant will also increase the range of species caught in local waters, including red spot, whiting and tuna. However, the benefits don't stop there. Previously untouched overseas markets, especially in Japan, will be opened up, and the glut of fish which occurs at certain times of the year will be eliminated. With local seafood buyers bidding up the price of the remaining fish, the co-op expects to increase its turnover by at least $3 million a year. The co-op will submit its plans for the facility to Port Stephens Council next month, and if it gets the go-ahead, will commence work on the plant in 3 to 4 months' time.
The bill concerns the amalgamation of the University of Newcastle, the Hunter Institute of Higher Education and the Newcastle branch of the New South Wales Conservatorium of Music. The make-up and size of the University Council, which caused much controversy in draft form, has been increased from 16 to 18 members, adding 1 academic and 1 staff association member. But university staff believe Education Minister Terry Metherell's changes are purely cosmetic.
The Staff Association is very unhappy. We have condemned the bill today because we believe that Dr Metherell's bill represents a gross erosion of the democratic freedoms of the academic staff and students for representation on the University Council. We believe that Dr Metherell's draconian cuts in the elected nature of the University Council do in fact indicate a totalitarian attitude and bring into clear view the prospect of political interference in the autonomous nature of the university.
The students are also unhappy, and both groups plan to lobby Dr Metherell, MPs and the Legislative Council for rejection or amending. The interim council structure has also been criticised, with students having no guaranteed representation.
We do have a number of concerns, and the fact that student representation, it's tokenistic as it is at the moment, and the fact that that's being halved is just totally offensive to us.
But Vice-Chancellor Keith Morgan believes the legislation is an improvement on the draft proposal.
I think it's a very considerable improvement on his first go. And I think that with some further amendments and adjustments, it could give us a bill that would allow us to manage the affairs of the university properly.
The 3.1 hectares of land adjoining the foreshore is the subject of 4 options prepared by the foreshore designers, track consultants. The public is being asked to fill in questionnaires for opinions and ideas, which will then go before council before a decision is made. Plan 1 is a landscape park, which the designers say would not be a permanent or quickly achieved result, and one which will require ongoing vigilance to maintain. Plan 2 suggests that gaps in the urban edge at Bond Street and Stevenson Place be filled with buildings and townhouses, giving, they say, a more cohesive and logical urban edge to the park and Newcastle East residential area. Plan 3 is similar to Plan 2, but with extra townhouses along the western end of the pensioner units. Plan 4 adds a cluster of townhouses on the lower flat area, but the designers say this conflicts with the goal of creating a strong urban edge at Stevenson Place. Each has in common open space, pedestrian access to the foreshore from Bond Street and the intersection of Telford Street and Stevenson Place. The cost of landscaping alone is expected to be around $1 million, but Director of Planning Gary Fielding does not expect the sale of the proposed townhouses to substantially offset this cost.
I think based on the comments that have been made about existing residential development there, that we could expect that there'll be a good deal of opposition to any further residential development, but I'd like to think that the public could look at that issue in a very broad way and start to appreciate that what we've got there at the moment is a partial urban edge provided by the 2 Bond stores, and I'd like them to visualise just how that urban edge could be reinforced and how attractive it could be through some very tasteful small-scale development adjoining those Bond stores.
And he is expecting a steady flow of residents over the next 8 weeks to view the plans at the City Administration Building, City Library and the Commonwealth Bank Building, Hunter and Newcomen Streets.
Australs had the better of play in the first 10 minutes of the match, but then Avala started to take control and never looked back. Former Socceroo Tony Henderson controlled the back, and when he moved forward he was also a danger to Australs. The home side did put some good moves together and were unfortunate not to get on the board in the first half. Avala's first half goal came in the 25th minute, beautifully finished off by the number 11 Theat Loven. Only a few moments later Avala were unlucky not to go further ahead as again they bombarded the Austral goalmouth. The second half followed a similar pattern, with Avala robbed of its second even though the ball went into the back of the net, the goal being disallowed for offside. Frustration seemed to creep into the Australs game, and after being given a yellow card in the first half, a crude tackle by Achert saw him heading for an early shower. And for good measure, Tony Henderson welcomed Kevin Shaw to Australia with a huge tackle that shook the tiny Englishman. Avala finally put the issue beyond doubt in the 85th minute when Stephen Berry, who had been dangerous all day, squeezed the ball home and the Sydney Siders grabbed the 2 points and left Australs languishing at the bottom of the table.